from number 10 Downing Street, where Gordon Brown announced earlier this evening that he's decided to stand down as leader of the Labour Party. There'll be a new leader in place by the autumn. In the meantime, Mr Brown has opened formal talks with the Liberal Democrats on trying to form a new government with him as Prime Minister. His announcement was closely followed by a new offer from the Conservatives to the Lib Dems, an offer to hold a referendum on changing the voting system. Well, tonight we'll assess the implications of an extraordinary day here at Westminster, and we start with our political editor, Nick Robinson.
The most famous address in the world has never seen anything quite like this. 4 days after an election which Gordon Brown lost, he emerged from number 10 to make an audacious bid to keep Labour in power and to reshape British politics for good.
If it becomes clear that the national interest, which is stable and principled government, can be best served by forming a coalition between the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats, then I believe I should discharge that duty to form that government, which would, in my view, command a majority in the House of Commons in the Queen's speech and any other confidence votes. But I have no desire to stay in my position longer than is needed to ensure the path to economic growth is assured and the process of political reform we have agreed moves forward quickly. The reason that we have a hung parliament is that no single party and no single leader was able to win the full support of the country. As leader of my party, I must accept that that is a judgment on me. I therefore intend to ask the Labour parties to set in train the processes needed for its own leadership election. I would hope that it would be completed in time for the new leader to be in post by the time of the Labour Party conference.
Put simply, Gordon Brown is offering to leave Downing Street, but only after 4 more months as Prime Minister, leading a coalition government. Immediately, first Alistair Campbell, now at Gordon Brown's side, then former Liberal leader David Steel, then Cabinet Minister and former Lib Dem Lord Audatious were out and about insisting that this was the way to keep the Tories out of office. Minutes later, the man who spent days talking to David Cameron welcomed a statement from a man he's also been meeting, in secret.
Gordon Brown has made an important announcement today. It must have been a very difficult thing for him to say personally, but I think he's taken it in the national interest, and I think his announcement could be an important element in the smooth transition towards a stable government that people deserve, without, of course, prejudice and without predicting what the outcome of the talks will be between ourselves and the Labour Party.
Gordon Brown has announced he intends to step down as Labour leader.
As the 6 o'clock news came on the air, David Cameron had been due to tell his MPs about the progress of his talks with the Lib Dems. Instead, he had to tear up his script and invite them to reach an instant judgment, to up their offer to the Lib Dems, an offer William Hague then made publicly.
In the interests of trying to create a stable, secure government, we will go the extra mile, and we will offer to the Liberal Democrats in a coalition government the holding of a referendum on the alternative vote system.
He said the Liberal Democrats now faced a choice, whether to join the Tories or to join
a government that would not be stable or secure, that would have a second unelected Prime Minister in a row, something that we believe would be unacceptable to the great majority of people in this country.
The Tories and Labour are now in an auction to secure the presence of Liberal Democrats in their cabinet and to put their man into number 10. Wind back just a few hours and it all felt so very different when the day began, with Liberal Democrat negotiators arriving for another day of talks with their Conservative counterparts.
Can you just tell us what you're hoping? What's the value of the talks to you?
Well, the talks are going well. We are meeting to discuss some specific ideas and we're optimistic about making further progress. That's all I've got to say at the moment.
The Tory negotiating team walked past the street they believed they were about to take possession of. All talked warmly about how well things were going.
Well, we've made further progress in our meetings with the Liberal Democrats this morning. On our part, we're now going to report back to David Cameron again and to have meetings with our parliamentary colleagues. And the negotiating teams are working really well together.
After a lunchtime meeting of Lib Dem MPs, there was no hint of what was about to come.
The parliamentary party has agreed that the central priority must be to form a strong and stable government in the national interest. The Parliamentary Party agreed that the proposals that have been discussed with the Conservative Party and that were aired today reflect very good progress on a number of points, but they have also asked for clarification of details in relation to education funding, in relation to fair taxes, and in relation to issues in regard to voting reform.
Tonight, though, Westminster is buzzing with talk of not one but two possible coalitions of who will be in power and who out, and of Lib Dem MPs agonising behind closed doors about who they should back. And the Tory leader has arrived home, wondering for the first time since election night if next week, after all, he will not be Prime Minister, but still Leader of the Opposition. Nick Robinson, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, 4 days after the general election, which delivered Britain's first hung parliament for 36 years, there's still no sign of the strong and stable government promised by all the party leaders. But there is now a sharper focus on the options available and the kind of government they would produce. Our Deputy Political Editor James Landale looks at the possible solutions.
Westminster is in flux. Newly elected MPs are arriving, the Prime Minister is departing, and yet it's still unclear just who will be in charge. So what are the options for government? Well, the Liberal Democrats could form a coalition with Labour. And to win the Lib Dems over, Labour's offering to change the way we go to the polls, introducing the alternative vote to ensure that all MPs get more than half the votes in their constituencies, and the promise of a referendum on full proportional representation in the future.
I can't prejudge them. We are going to enter into these discussions in a spirit of goodwill. We will be constructive. If there is the common ground between us, which enables us to form an arrangement between us, then I look forward to that taking place.
But crucially, a Lib Dem Labour coalition wouldn't have enough MPs here in the House of Commons to form a majority. They'd have to rely on the support of other, smaller parties. A progressive rainbow alliance to some, a recipe for instability, say others.
What's wrong, I think, is doing it on the basis of looking for an alliance with the Lib Dems, and that doesn't make sense numerically. Even with the Lib Dems, we don't have as many votes as the Conservatives, and it's wrong politically.
The second main option is for the Lib Dems to do a deal with the Conservatives. Now, the Tories would offer the alternative vote too, but only if voters agreed to it in a referendum. But some Tories are distrustful of any deal with the Lib Dems, particularly now they're talking to Labour.
Do you feel betrayed by the Liberal Democrats? They've been two-timing you.
No, I'm not going to say that about people who we may still work with in coalition in the future. And in arguing rightly, as they have done this afternoon, for stable and secure government, I think it would be wrong to construct a government which would not be stable.
A Lib Dem Conservative deal would in parliamentary terms be clear-cut. They'd have a majority of around 18, so no other parties would have to be involved. But many Lib Dems would find it emotionally difficult to hook up with the Tories.
Whichever way you go, there are going to be some people in the party unhappy. That's a fact. And Nick Clegg knows that, and Paddy Ashdown knows that. I know that. So you cannot please all the people all the time with this issue.
Of course, if all else fails, the Tories could form a minority government, surviving day to day, vote to vote. So this then is what a hung parliament looks like. A lot of options, a lot of choices, and it's what you, the people, voted for. James Landale, BBC News, Westminster.